We are going to have more on the massive winter storm in just a moment, but we want to start with the deadly shooting over the weekend in Minneapolis. 37-year-old Alex Pretti, an ICU nurse, was shot and killed by U.S. Border Protection officials on Saturday. The Department of Homeland Security claimed that agents tried to disarm him, but he violently resisted. But video from the moment appears to contradict those claims. The killing of Pretti sparked even more anger and protests in Minneapolis and across the country, following near-daily demonstrations since Renee Good, a 37-year-old woman, was shot and killed by a federal agent in Minneapolis fewer than 3 weeks ago. CBS News national correspondent Lana Zak is in Minneapolis with more. Lana, what is the situation on the ground and what are you hearing from folks?
Hey there, Lindsay. We're continuing to monitor because this is a tinderbox and it has the potential to become explosive, as we saw with the shooting of Alex Pretti. There are people who continue to show up at the memorial. That site seems to be more staid than some of the videos our viewers may be seeing from angry protesters at the Hilton overnight. Overall, there is a question about how things will be resolved. And given that conversation between Governor Walz and President Trump, in which it seemed like both men decided to actually bring the temperature down, there is, for the first time, a little bit of optimism here.
Do we have any details about who will be leading this investigation into the shooting and whether there will be cooperation between federal and local authorities?
Well, at this moment, that is definitely the Department of Homeland Security. And in fact, we heard from local officials that police officers were not even allowed on the scene of Pretti's shooting until after it had already become contaminated and evidence had been removed. So what we're seeing in court is the state trying to sue to require that their Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehensions has access to that investigation. But again, this is a potential breakthrough between President Trump and Governor Walz. The president said that he would talk to the Department of Homeland Security, according to Walz's office, about cooperation with the Minnesota officials.
Okay, Lana Zak, thank you. The White House is defending its operations in Minneapolis. Here's White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt this afternoon.
As President Trump said yesterday, the administration is reviewing everything with respect to the shooting, and we will let that investigation play out. But let's be clear about the circumstances which led to that moment on Saturday. This tragedy occurred as a result of a deliberate and hostile resistance by Democrat leaders in Minnesota.
CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes is following this from our Washington bureau. Nancy, the White House announced it is sending the administration border czar Tom Homan to Minneapolis. What is he being tasked with?
And Lindsay, White House officials insist that this is not an indication that the president has lost any faith with the leaders who are on the ground right now, notably Gregory Bovino, who is the head of Border Patrol. They simply say that this is Tom Homan's area of expertise and that he needs to be there to help relieve the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, who runs all of DHS and is also dealing with a major snowstorm. Take a listen to White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, how she described it a few minutes ago.
Mr. Homan is doing an exceptional job, and he has been working with Secretary Noem and President Trump over the course of the last year. Secretary Noem still has the utmost confidence and trust of the President of the United States, and she's continuing to oversee the entire Department of Homeland Security and all of the immigration enforcement that's taking place across the whole entire country.
Leavitt added that Homan is due to get on a plane and start heading to Minneapolis in a few hours, Lindsay.
So Lana mentioned the conversation that the president had with Minnesota's Governor Tim Walz. What more do we know about their conversation?
Well, both President Trump and the governor said afterwards that it was a productive conversation. The president even said that they were on the same page. Very rare for President Trump to compliment Tim Walz in any way. He usually has a string of negative comments about him. In this case, it does sound like it was a good conversation, but doesn't mean that everything is smooth sailing. Afterwards, Governor Walz said that while the conversation was productive, he did tell the president that his staff doesn't have his facts straight about the situation on the ground in Minnesota and that they need impartial investigations and they need to reduce the number of federal agents in Minnesota. And then White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, for her part, said that Walz and the mayor of Minneapolis are largely to blame for stirring up anger, stirring up protests in the city of Minneapolis, and she basically laid the death of Alex Pretti this weekend at their door. So still a lot of tension between leaders in Minnesota and leaders at the White House at this hour, Lindsay.
All right, Nancy Cordes, thank you so much. Minnesota state and local officials are going to try to argue in court that the federal deployment of immigration agents in Minneapolis is illegal. Two separate hearings today will focus on the ongoing surge in the state, one weighing whether the Trump administration's operations are constitutional, another looking at evidence related to the killing of Alex Pretti. CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman is here with me in studio. So let's take these arguments one by one. What happened in the hearing to stop the ICE surge?
So that hearing was this morning, and what Minnesota argues is that this ICE occupation in Minnesota is unconstitutional and illegal, Lindsay. They say it violates the 10th Amendment, state sovereignty. What the Trump administration argues is that this is a legal law enforcement operation. The federal government has authority here. The judge seemed very torn about how to handle this, Lindsay, whether or not this does in fact violate the 10th Amendment. She said that we are in shockingly unusual time, she said, but she didn't know if it gave her greater license to craft a remedy in the 10th Amendment. So we don't know yet what she's going to rule here. There was a lot of discussion as well about a letter from Attorney General Pam Bondi that had certain demands for Minnesota, whether the Trump administration is trying to force the state to enact certain policies by bringing ICE in. Now, the Trump administration refuted this. They say this is all about law enforcement. Minnesota said that it is essentially a ransom note. Lindsay.
The next hearing is about preserving evidence. What can we expect there?
That's right. So over the weekend, a judge made a decision, it's temporary though, that the evidence related to the killing of Alex Pretti can't be altered in any way. But today there's going to be, or destroyed, because as you were talking about with Lana, the state and local police have not had access to this, Lindsay. So today's hearing is a way to litigate this in court, to give the other side a chance to respond. The judge will decide if he's going to extend that ruling.
Katrina Kaufman, thank you.
Thank you.